So it's important to understand the difference between those outcomes in our lives that we can influence and those outcomes that we can't. All right, I want to open this video up with a story, if you like. Not so much of a story, more of a metaphor or an analogy. All right, so I want you just to consider a farmer. I want you to now just ponder over or reflect upon the results that a farmer is actually able to generate and that which he or she isn't. For example, a farmer can walk into his or her field and scatter some seed. So the farmer can scatter seed, he can sow seed. Prior to scattering the seed, the farmer can take responsibility for cultivating the ground, right? Preparing the ground, perhaps on his plough, digging all the ground up. Then now he's created an environment through which seed can essentially be received by the ground well. Now, we wouldn't just want to go as farmers and scatter seed on compacted ground, right? We want to make sure that the seed can actually get buried and enter into a condition through which it could potentially grow. So if now the ground is cultivated, we can influence that as farmers. We can take responsibility for sowing seed. We can do those things. These are factors within our control. Now what we can do is we can water the seed, we can perhaps put down nettage over the ground so that the crows and the birds don't come down and peck up and eat the seed, because we know that birds do that sort of thing, so we can protect the seed to the best of our ability. But this again is part of something that we can partially influence, but it's not something we can fully influence, because if we go to bed at night time, rabbits might come along, they might eat the seeds, birds might come along when we're not paying attention. So there's some things in our lives that we can control, and there's some things in our life that we cannot control. Some people get stressed out because they try to control factors outside of their control in life. So what we cannot control, what we have no say in, what we cannot determine, what we cannot influence, is whether seed takes root and produces a crop or produces a harvest. All growth happens apart from through our volition. By that, what I mean is all growth happens apart from through our choice. We cannot choose to grow. We can choose to create a set of conditions in our lives. Growth is an entity within itself that cannot yet even be fully explained, not even by scientists. Even though they will try, right, they cannot determine where growth comes from. So it's actually wiser for us just to simply take full responsibility for the factors within our control. But I want to just focus on 5 areas within our life that we have complete, and we do have the final say over, right? First things first, being open to experience. Us being open to experience as human beings means that negative emotions aren't resisted, they're not denied, they're not undermined or brushed under a carpet. It's when we experience negative emotions in life, and emotion makes up a huge component of our life. We experience life at a number of different levels. We experience life physically, through our physical bodies. We experience life rationally in our minds, as we kind of do our best to rationalize situations and things sometimes, as we sometimes compare new ideas to ideas we've already embraced. Then we have our beliefs and our attitudes and our preferences come into place and our values. And this essentially determines whether we are open to receiving new information, to experiencing new experiences, or whether we're closed to them. If a person comes along and says something that essentially we completely disagree with, we've got to question how open we are to growing or having our understanding enhanced in some way. Negative emotion can sometimes act as the greatest block and barrier to our personal growth. All right, if we allow ourselves to be overcome by emotion, then that means that we're not working towards overcoming emotion. When we experience negative emotion, we have 2 approaches we can take. We can allow ourselves to be overcome by emotion, or we can work hard to regulate and overcome emotion. This is within the remits of our control. All right. So, where some people, would say that negative emotions are full stop, I would say that negative emotions present us with a comma and give us opportunity to work through and learn how to manage and regulate. Now, this isn't common cultural belief. You have organizations such as the American Psychiatry Association, who are defining new terminologies to define difference every single day. All right, no one likes being put in a box. There's a pretty good chance that you don't like being put in a box. There are organisations out there who are commissioned to create new boxes to put people in. Mental disorders, mental health conditions are like the greatest plague pandemic of our time. Many young people, especially in schools, who look to professionals, teachers, workers for guidance, for direction in life. Young people are, still figuring out who to trust and who not to trust. So unfortunately are led astray by some people who are so quick to assign labels onto them and are in turn so slow to take time to actually understand them. As human beings, we like to be understood. We don't like to be put in boxes, but sometimes as human beings, we're quick to put other people in boxes and slow to take time to understand them. This is a choice that we have. We're either open to experience or we are closed to it. Envision a fully functioning human being who lives existentially. All right? How about if you were to evaluate your readiness to live fully in the present without being stuck in the past or transfixed on the future? Right? Think about it. All we actually ever experience in life is right now. I'm not talking about current conditions versus ideal conditions, right? Life is lived in a state of flux, as I've mentioned, but life is just an ongoing succession of nows, right? So we're living in the now, right now, and if I was to ask you what it is that you actually need more of in your life right now, what would you say? I'm not saying what you want more of. What we want is very, very different from what we need. All right? Many people become more transfixed and focused on what they want or what they perceive their deficits might be at some point in the future, rather than appreciating what they actually have in their lives today. Going back 60 or 70 years ago, a gentleman named Mr. Abraham Maslow. If you've embarked on any of my other trainings, you've probably heard me teach this. Abraham Maslow proposed as a hierarchy of needs that all human beings are constantly operating within in life. On a basic foundational level, we have our physiological needs, and these are the needs that we need to essentially survive. Food, water, clothing, shelter, warmth. Those are essentials for life. If we don't have these things, we might die. We stand at risk of dying. But anything outside of that is more preference. For example, security. Do we need security? Well, some people would say so, but when we actually stop and analyse, really reflect objectively, no, we don't need security. Why? Because security is just like an abstract concept. We feel secure sometimes when we surround ourselves with people or materialistic possessions or surround ourselves with money. It's why some people will amass, ridiculous amounts of wealth in their life because it gives them a sense of security. But what do we actually need in order to feel secure? Think about security within itself, all right? So when we feel insecure, we feel as if there is a deficit within us. What many people do is they try to fill what they perceive as being an internal void with external stuff, money, materialistic possessions, so on and so forth. Right? So when we live existentially, right, it means that we're no longer focused on what we don't have or factors outside of us, but instead we just become fully present, making peace with who we are right here today, more appreciative that we actually have all of our needs met, even if we don't have all of our wants met. Wants are different from needs. It's a perspective in life that might seem a little bit foreign to many who operate out of the Western mind. Self-awareness is key. Fully functioning people are aware of themselves and can identify the relationship between the health of their attitude, their outlook on life, their beliefs, and the quality of their day-to-day experience. People who are not aware of themselves can't. What does it look like to be a self-aware person? All right, I shall give you a demonstration of what a self-aware, responsible person looks like, imperfectly. I am responsible for my life. Everything that happens inside of me, I and I alone am responsible for. If I have a feeling, if I experience angst or fear or dismay, if I experience sorrow or sadness or anger or frustration or rage, if I experience guilt, shame, panic. Well, I'm responsible for these things. These are emotions within me. It is no one else's responsibility to manage or regulate me. This is my life. I and I alone are responsible for how I conduct myself. What I do, what I say is my choice. All right? What other people say and do to me, that is not my choice. Therefore, I am not responsible for how other people are towards me, but I am responsible for how I am towards other people. I can respond to people in an aware, honouring, responsible, mature way, or I can react to what I think is going on. And all of these factors are going to be determined by my self-awareness. All right? Let us look at what it might look like to be irresponsible, to be unaware. I feel anxious and it's your fault. You're making me feel something. I only done this thing because this person told me to, because I haven't yet developed my own mind. I certainly am not aware of the relationship between my thoughts, my feelings and my actions. I do not understand me. I am not in control of me. I am anxious. I need someone to come along and fix me. Maybe a doctor, maybe a pharmacist, maybe a guru or a healer who can come and take responsibility for me. Will someone come and take responsibility for my life? I need this. Big difference, isn't there? All right, come on. We're speaking now as master practitioners, right? We've evolved in our thinking. We've moved beyond all the kind of entry-level basic stuff, right? We're looking at how it is that we can now essentially become men and women of influence, all right? Self-awareness is key. Fully functioning people are aware of themselves and can identify the relationship between the health of their attitude, outlook, beliefs, and the quality of their experience. So what might that essentially mean for us? Well, it's not that we are here to teach people this. We're not here to be everyone's teacher, all right? But as master practitioners, we develop the degree of insight to realize the questions that we can ask that will provoke people to look a little bit closer to home when they're pointing their fingers out the way, to blame other people in society and the world at large for their internal experience. All right, we can invite them to say, yeah, I can understand these people when those things have happened. I'm wondering, what role are you playing in determining or influencing how it is that you feel today? Because unless a person's willing to look within, then they're not open to experience. And if they're not open to experience, then they're certainly not open to grow. All right, we can only work and relate to those people who are open and ready to grow. People will not change in life until the desire to change becomes greater than their desire to remain the same. And sometimes people have not yet hit rock bottom hard enough to find that motivation to drive change or growth in their life. Sometimes people just need to hit rock bottom significantly harder. As human beings, we are stubborn creatures, all right? You mark my words, and I'm sure on some level you've already come to experience this. We all have the potential and the capacity for so much more, but sometimes we are the greatest barriers to our own growth through the attitudes that we embrace. So what does it mean to be a fully functioning person? Creative expression. All right, if I was to ask you right now, what does it mean to be free? What would it mean for you to just be and express yourself freely? What is the relationship between freedom and creative expression? Art, music. Like, what am I doing right now? Am I here rigidly reading off a script? You might not 100% buy into my teaching communication style just yet, but I'll tell you what I'm doing. I'm expressing myself creatively. All right, there are no strings on me. I'm not trying to be someone else. I'm not trying to impress you with the words that are coming out of my mouth, because I understand that not all people are open to experience. I understand that not all people are ready to live existentially. I understand that not all people are aware of themselves. So people go through life undermining that which is different from them, in the same way that psychiatrists undermine anyone in the world who's different from them by diagnosing and creating all these terms that undermine what? People who are not aware, people who are not open to experience themselves emotionally. Creative expression is expressed more by freedom or new experiences than by safety and or emotional stability. I've never known anyone to go and to create anything phenomenal with their life who was doing so in a reserved, fearful way. right? Think about those people who live life in such an anxious way. What are they scared of? Scared of not getting it right, scared of getting it wrong, scared of not being liked by other people, not being received well. So people hold back, restrict their creative expression for fear of what other people might think. But who is it that drives the world forward? Who is it that make their way into the history books? Who is it that creates those pieces of art that make their way into Le Louvre? Right? Who is it that essentially writes the best-selling books? Who is it that gets to the top spot? It's those who express themselves freely, creatively, free from restriction or fear. Because when there's fear in our life, I guarantee you one thing, we will forever hold back. We will not give our all. We will not perform at our best. Because we're still apprehensive, concerned by how we're received by other people. And there ain't no freedom to be found in that. Just restriction, all right? Fear is kind of like a prison that many people live their lives in. You can define this fear as an illness, as a disease or as a condition for as long as you want to, but it ain't going to serve you. Right? I promise you, I give you my word. Fulfillment and peace. What does it look like to be a fully functioning person? Fully functioning people know fulfillment and inner peace. Fulfillment and inner peace come through creative expression. When we live our lives in a liberated, free way. Right, many people go through life, freedom of speech, I'm entitled to, I want to say this, no. Some people go through life just trying to prove themselves, trying to justify themselves. And they do so in what is perceived to be such a bold way. But when a person is going through life trying to justify themselves or trying to be heard or trying to make a statement or trying to prove a point, it's just reflective of their own insecurity and need to be heard. Some people take the world by storm for no other reason than to reinforce their own assertion, and that's not always the mark of maturity. All right, maturity can be found through creative expression. Why? Because it no longer matters whether you like these ideas or not. Right? Doesn't matter whether you like this teaching style or not. Right? This is an expression of creative expression, of freedom, liberation. And what is it that anyone's actually working towards in life? What, getting it right, getting it wrong? There's no liberty to be found in those things. All right? There is no freedom to be found in getting it right or not getting it wrong. Freedom can only be found in creative expression. And when we can tap into this degree of creative expression in life, we find freedom, we find liberation through which, and only through which, fulfillment and inner peace can be found, where we are no longer concerned by what other people think or by what other people feel, and we're not going through life for the purposes of undermining or belittling anyone. Again, those people who go through life undermining people, this is the mark of the coward. It's the mark of the fearful human being, and there's no freedom in fear. But there is freedom to be found in the peace that comes through creative expression. Fulfillment and peace isn't motivated by happiness, right? We don't find fulfillment in happiness. Happiness is just happiness. It's an emotional sensation, it's a feeling. Fulfillment is deeper than that. Fulfillment comes when we are eventually at peace with ourselves. We find peace, and we make peace with the fact that we're flawed, that we're imperfect, that we don't have all the answers. We make peace with the fact and the knowledge that there are voids in our life. We don't have all the answers. We don't know how to live life in the most effective way all of the time, but we're learning. We're not at the final destination just yet. We're just on the journey, but we're learning as we grow. We're okay with learning. We don't have to be there yet, because the day we're there is kind of like the day there's nowhere else to go. So we make peace with just being on the journey and not being at the destination. The destination becomes nothing more than really kind of like a token prize if we live out and continue to grow through the journey that we're on. Not motivated by happiness or emotional gratification, and can delay state today in anticipation of personal growth or progress tomorrow. Right? So fulfillment and peace cannot be a goal within life. Fulfillment and peace is just simply a result or a consequence or an outcome of us committing to the journey. As we're open to experience, living existentially, just experiencing life in the here and now. Not focusing on where we've come from, not so much focusing on where we're going, as if those things are necessities. It's not focusing on our needs being met by people in the way in which we expect them to be met because we're not entitled to anything. Let's make peace with the fact that we're entitled to nothing as human beings. Why? Because we're just not entitled to anything as human beings. If we can embody and embrace this attitude, we can become free from need of other people, which leaves us free to relate with other people instead. As we grow in self-awareness, we grow in our ability to self-regulate. As we grow in our ability to self-regulate, we naturally become more aware of other people and their struggles in regulating. As this happens, we can start becoming far more grounded in our ability to speak into people's lives through art, through music, through teaching, through word, through whatever creative expression that we need to. Fulfillment and peace comes about when we can eventually reach that stage of our life where we realize that, my life's actually counting for something. I'm actually making a positive difference in the lives of other people. This is so much better than just instant gratification and a short-lived feeling of happiness. All right, I've done my best to take you on a journey here, friends, envisioning the fully functioning person.